The India-US trade deal did not come out of nowhere. It was unfolded in stages. What remained unclear were the conditions attached, the purchase commitments, and the policy shift quietly built into the framework. Within hours, the White House revised its fact sheet. Words like committed were replaced with intents. What if a major shift in India's trade policy was first announced by another country's president? Not in our parliament, not in our government briefings, but through a post on X. Today we'll be analyzing the ongoing India-US trade deal. The India-US trade deal did not come out of nowhere. It was unfolded in stages through tariffs, pressure over Russia, political signaling, and a lot of confusion over what was actually agreed and what was still being negotiated. It really began in August 2025. That's when the United States imposed tariffs of up to 50% on key Indian exports. This included a 25% base tariffs and an additional 25% linked to India's continued purchase of Russian oil. This immediately hurt Indian exporters and created months of trade tension between New Delhi and Washington. Over the following months, India has gradually reduced Russian oil imports. Analysts widely link this sudden change to US pressure. This is where the first constitutional question arises: sovereignty. In the preamble, India declares itself a sovereign nation, meaning it has the ultimate authority to make its own laws, policies, and international decisions without outside interference. Under Article 51 of the Indian Constitution, India conducts its foreign policy independently, guided by national interest. Energy security has always been treated as a sovereign economic decision. Yet here, trade penalties were directly tied to whom India buys oil from. On February 2, 2026, the deal was publicly announced not by the Indian Parliament, not by the Commerce Ministry, but by US President Donald Trump. Now this triggered the second constitutional concern: transparency and parliamentary accountability. The news broke out to the Indian public through the headlines stating that tariffs had been cut from nearly 50% to 18%. That number became the public narrative and was celebrated widely. What remained unclear were the conditions attached, the purchase commitments, and the policy shift quietly built into the framework. India is a parliamentary democracy. Trade policy is handled by the government, but major decisions that affect agriculture, taxes, and national strategy are expected to be discussed and explained openly. Yet, ministers and members of parliament found out the details through foreign statements and White House releases. Let us have a close look at the issue of transparency. Transparency is not merely about releasing information. It is about who controls the narrative of national decision making. When details emerge first through foreign sources, the perception is that domestic democratic institutions are bypassed. The gap between foreign announcement and domestic disclosure became a political issue. Then came the White House fact sheet on February 6th. It claimed India would cut tariffs on US agricultural goods, eliminate its digital service taxes, and commit to massive purchases of American products. Backlash followed immediately. Farm unions warned that subsidized American agricultural imports could destabilize Indian farmers. Opposition leaders demanded that the full agreement be tabled in Parliament for transparency and debate. Within hours, the White House revised its fact sheet. Words like committed were replaced with intents. References to certain agricultural items were softened. That revision itself became evidence of something deeper. Negotiations were still fluid, and yet, political narrative had already been shaped abroad. So by the time corrections were made, public perception had already formed around the claims that were not fully settled or officially clarified within India. In the textile sector, India would receive zero tariffs only if manufacturers used US cotton and fabric. Critics argue that when access to export markets depend on using foreign raw materials, the economic autonomy to make domestic products narrows. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal had repeatedly stated that the national interests have been protected and sensitive agricultural items remain excluded, and that no agreement harming farmers will be signed. That is precisely the constitutional tension at the heart of this story. India's constitution rests on two core democratic ideas: that sovereignty belongs to the people and that governance must be accountable and transparent. When trade policies intersect with energy choices, agriculture, taxation, and strategic alignment, and when major disclosures originate outside the parliament, it invites scrutiny not just as economics but as constitutional ethics. This deal is still evolving. The formal agreement is expected in March 2026, but here are larger questions we should reflect upon. In the era of global power politics, how does India balance strategic partnership with constitutional autonomy? At what point does economic cooperation begin to look like external influence? This is no longer a trade story. It is a test of sovereignty, transparency, and how constitutional values operate in real-world diplomacy. So the question remains, will this friendship benefit us with time, or will we keep bearing its cost? Thanks for watching. We are student journalists. So if you want us to cover something, comment below and stay connected until next time.